Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are joining us. Welcome to Power Platform today. This is a good show. I got a good feeling about this today. I have the wonderful. It's funny actually. We'll get into this in a bit. I think of him as Sam. Everyone I know thinks of him as Sam, but every time I've been looking at everything to make sure that the name's been right, it is Samuel Smith. So I'm going to bring him on now. Please, Sam, introduce yourself. Say hello to the world.
Hello, world. Yes, no, my name is Sam. But unluckily for me, in what was it 2014, when Sam Smith, the pop star, arrived on the scenes, I was
Of
kind of like,
course.
right, I need to do something to demarcate from this. So he's like, oh, he's just not the pop star. So I did sort of embrace my full name. So that's why I kind of introduced myself as Samuel in a professional context. But I feel we're way beyond the professional context. So Sam is just fine.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much. Yes, for anyone that isn't aware, certainly Sam and I have worked together for a few years, certainly. I think it would have been. Um,
I think we managed two, didn't we?
I think we
Just
must have
now?
managed to. He's
I
since
think it
moved
was
on,
about two.
unfortunately, but we
No,
we don't talk so much about work on this one, so we'll keep that separate. It's
no,
very
quite
much more
right.
about the Power Platform as a whole and kind of how you got into it and that side of things. So
That sounds good.
it's good to Sam, excellent. Yeah, because I swear every time I was typing out the name, whether it was on LinkedIn, on YouTube, everywhere that I have to do the various updates, I had to every time double check because it just felt wrong.
Yeah, no, it's very that's the only reason behind it. There's no other. Otherwise, it was actually a big, not to talk too much about work, but when I where I work currently at Belrado, they asked like, what do you want your email to be? And it's the first time I went for Sam.Smith instead of Samuel.Smith. So it's and it definitely does, yeah, it makes a bit of a difference. Yeah.
Cool. Um, so there was another distinction that I saw. So obviously you sent over your email address to connect to this, and I'm not going to put it out there, but it did
Thank you.
remind me that you had a career before you even got into Power Platform, and I actually want to start there
Yeah,
because
yeah, let's do
you
it.
like many other people I know in the Power Platform, you got your start or you got into it in a way that wasn't IT, it wasn't tech.
Yeah.
You essentially have had at least one other career before, potentially others, but you were an opera singer.
It was, yeah. So funnily enough, I came across that email address, which may have the word something to do with singing in it. I can't wait for all the spamming. But no, so yeah, for a while it was my professional email address. But yeah, no. So I messed around a lot with computers and programming as a teenager, but it was never anything that I guess I kind of thought would lead to a career.
Hmm.
And my older brother, who was a serious developer and went on to do really cool stuff. But I never, to be honest, I didn't. So it just was a very kind of nebulous, faraway world.
Hmm.
But yeah, no, it's like growing up, I was much more of a kind of a musician artist. So yeah, I read music at university and then went to music college in London, um, and sort of yeah, fell into singing through doing sort of so I was a trumpet player, a drummer,
Oh
sort of
wow.
a little bit of a pianist as well. So yeah, sort of jack of all trades when it came to music, really. And then yeah, I got into sort of training to be an opera singer, which was I kind of went into it really sort of naively, just like thinking, oh, I can already make a big noise, that'll be fine. And you kind of get into it, and it's like, right, so you kind of need to know at least how to sing in kind of four languages, how to learn all the different kind of styles that are kind of going from you might be singing something that was like composed in 1600 something
Hmm.
all the way through to yesterday as it were. And then you're meant to be able to act. I'm sure like a lot of people, if they have gone to see an opera, might sort of contest whether it is acting, but there is meant to be some acting components. So yeah, there's quite a lot of like sort of skill sets that have to like kind of come together to be sort of to, I guess, give a half decent performance. But
Hmm.
yeah, so I studied singing for about 4 years after, so I did various master's qualifications, but most of it was all just to be in a certain building, learning from other people.
Hmm.
And then yeah, I went on and sort of did a little bit of freelancing in London. Been on stage at the Royal Opera House, which is pretty cool. And then yeah, went to Germany for a couple of years as well. So yeah, like can assure you, like I have a real respect for people who can work in another language because I arrived and basically the agent person who'd got me this job in Germany just sort of said, "Don't worry, they'll all speak English. So just if you can pick up a few bits and pieces before you arrive, that would be great." And I arrived, and it was just like not a single word of English was spoken in the entire rehearsal. So I kind of had no idea what I was doing. So yeah, no, I sort of had a bit of a life throughout my 20s, yeah, in opera, and then yeah, sort of came out of that sort of a little bit like wanting to do something a little bit more sociable, I guess, when I came back from Germany in terms of hours and
Wait,
pardon me,
but
family
before
time.
we get into like what made you stop doing that? Was it a forced stop, or was it, as you're just about to say, was
It
it
was
a
like
social change?
it was a mixture. So
Right.
like I had a few sort of like medical things going on with my voice, which was sort of basically meant that I was finding singing more and more difficult than I wanted to. So it
Right.
wasn't really feeling as kind of natural as it had once felt. And then on top of that, yeah, I kind of was like, even with doing really, really good concerts and gigs, you're sort of like you lead this weird sort of parallel existence where like your free time is like a Wednesday, middle of Wednesday afternoon where no one else has free time. Uh, and so it's quite difficult to kind of like keep yeah, and then obviously the weekends like your time I might be like right I'm in all day rehearsals or I've got a concert on Saturday night or Friday night and I didn't really find that suited me particularly well either, to be honest.
Hmm.
So yeah, it was a mixture of like lifestyle and then kind of like medical stuff as well. But yeah, coming to the end of it and then kind of thinking, what cross transferable skills do I have? Is it's a bit of a challenge because you're like it's quite a niche
I mean that's
niche
definitely
area.
niche. I would say flexibility, the ability to be in a difficult situation and thrive. I think you've got those. I mean that just
Oh,
going
that yeah,
to Germany and being in that sort of position and making it work. I think that a lot of what we do in the world of consulting, you kind of end up doing that. So there's at least that. And the fact
yeah.
that
I
you
think you've got
studied, I
to.
mean, you studied a massive amount to get to that point already. So you have that ability to sit down and learn.
I think yeah, it's the application. To be fair, so before I got into opera, I would say my ability to apply myself was pretty limited. I was a really lazy teenager that was kind of like, and me and my brother would be those things like, "Oh, you got a really good grade for such and such." It's like, yeah, yeah, but I worked really hard for it. Oh, okay. It wasn't really necessarily seen as this, but I kind of yeah got to music college and I'd kind of yeah my degree had been 3 years of kind of partying really with a bit of studying thrown in, and I kind of got to this point in my life where I was like right I can't just mess around like, and I had a singing teacher at the time who was it felt very harsh at the time, but it did equip me with a bit of like, you know, this is how hard everyone else is working, and if you're not doing that, it's not going to work well for you. So no,
Hmm.
it has worked really well in terms of transferring into new skills and all of that kind of good stuff.
Yeah. So from the Germany opera straight into Power Platform.
No, no, we all know. No, no, no. I did a fantastic sideward move into recruitment, which is really interesting because when I kind of interact with members of the recruitment industry now, you can tell they kind of look through the LinkedIn profile and be like, work for a partner, 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 and then, oh no. And they just because I get this, well, you'll know this because you've worked in recruitment. It's like, really? So no, I came out of I kind of actually thought I wanted to be an English teacher for a while.
Oh
Because
wow.
basically that was kind of the thing that I really wanted to study at university. And yet I guess a lot of my family and everyone around me was like, well, you've done a lot of music study, so that would make more sense. So I thought, why don't I retrain as an English teacher? So I was going to go through that, and I kind of was waiting to start my PGCE
Hmm.
and all of that. So I kind of was starting that, and I have to be honest, the kind of idea of going into doing a PGCE and kind of like not really earning any money for quite a long period of time was not filling me with
No, that's a
happiness.
hard. It's a hard life.
It's it's a hard life, but it was also, to be honest, at that when you're kind of like in your well, it would have been very early 30s, but you kind of have commitments and things that you
Mm.
need to financially. So anyway, I kind of whilst I was waiting to go onto the PGC or thinking about it, I got a job as a recruitment consultant, which was just quite interesting. I have to say, I get it kind of like being able to play a character definitely helped from those days. But yeah, I did. Let's see, I think I did about 12 months as a recruitment consultant. But I
Nice.
basically chanced into. I've funny enough met my now wife whilst I was on a recruitment training course,
Ah.
and actually, and I kind of with things were going really well, and I was kind of like, right, I need to get myself back up to London. So really, the only reason for getting changing into this very specific recruitment company that specialized in Dynamics 365. Power Platform really wasn't really much of a thing at this point. We're sort
Yeah.
of like talking 2019, sort of early 2019. um and I was just, to be honest, at the time it was like, oh, that seems good, and it's another bit of tech. I've been doing kind of first line, second line support engineers at my previous place. I was like, I'll be fine. And yeah, that was kind of how I got into messing around with Power Platform and eventually getting a job in it. Really, it was just recruiting for people in it, and sort of, I have to be honest, speaking to people like yourself, Reese, kind of thought, how hard can it be?
That's true. I make it look effortless.
No, that's very much said in jest, but no, it was very much kind of, I just did a couple of the. I think I was lucky in terms of like a lot of the training material started becoming a lot more accessible just
Mm,
as I was kind of starting to try and get into it. So
yeah.
like the Microsoft Learn material was a lot more available, because I think really leading up to that point, it was probably what the Neil Parkhurst blog,
Oh goodness, yes.
um, maybe a couple of books, and there wasn't really the Microsoft Learn, and the kind of documentation really wasn't a thing at that point, or it was very early days.
Yeah. So there was a transition, because when I first got into CRM, as it was back then, so that was 2011 ish.
Yeah,
Um, there was an SDK. So Microsoft released an SDK, but it was such a developer thing. Like it was so focused on developers back
yeah,
then that there wasn't. I mean, there were the certifications and all that. That was still there. They
yeah,
did have documentation and training, but it was kind of all over the place. Like there wasn't a single place. When
yeah,
they finally brought in learn.microsoft.com, that changed the game in many ways, because even though there's varying degrees of completeness, let's say, to the documentation on that site,
yeah,
it brought all the various different things together into one place. So at least when you were
yeah,
looking for anything from Microsoft, you could go to that one site and from there find anything related to tech, whether it be APIs, documented to the nth degree, assemblies for Microsoft Windows NT, everything's
yeah,
on
yeah,
there.
yeah.
And so that kind of
Exactly. Yeah,
brought it in together. But before that, I learned with the SDK. Like that was my way. But again, I was a developer. So for me, that made a lot of sense. I had this, for anyone out there that doesn't know, SDK, Christ, actually, what? Something
software
development
development
kit,
kit.
software development kit, that's it.
No,
Uh,
yeah.
and it came as an executable file. Basically, you just ran it, and it was a zip file. It just extracted a whole bunch of code samples, and the code samples were built in such a way that you should be able to
Oh,
run it
nice. Yeah, yeah,
for every single type of operation you would ever do with the API. There was an example for it. So it was literally, you could take that, you could run every single one of the Visual Studio solutions, and you could test and understand what every single message in the
yeah,
platform does. And through that, I learned how to code, how to write plugins. And it was fantastic. It was a brilliant resource because for me, it made a lot more sense than blogs or documentation because it was interactive.
yeah,
I could actually stop it, do a breakpoint, walk through it, and go, right, okay, I can, and then tweak it and go, all right, I'm going to do this now and see what that does. And it was always my go-to. So anytime I had to solve a problem, I'd always go to the SDK to say, right, where's that message? Let me find an example of it and use that to understand what I then need to actually write. And I think they've lost a bit of that because while that still
yeah,
exists to an extent, it's actually harder to find now because it used to be I would get the SDK and everything was there. Whereas now the samples, there are samples, but they're all over the place. They're in GitHub, they're on Learn, but
yeah,
they're
yeah.
hidden everywhere. And that was, to me, that was a resource that was brilliant. And it's a weird sort of place that they're in now, I think.
It's good. I mean, to be fair, I must like jump into the AI frenzy straight away. But to be fair, that is where something like the Microsoft Learn MCP server, and then there's a couple of really good ones. There's one I've been playing around with on as a GitHub MCP server. I think it's called grep dot something,
Hmm.
but it basically does this ridiculous quick find for functions that might not be as well documented. So it'll
Cool.
kind of like do a thing of like obviously based on like how many stars the GitHub repo has, etc.
Hmm.
But it's really, really good, especially for I don't know. Obvious one is not so much of an issue now, but for example, you're using the Fluent UI React library a lot, for example.
Yep.
The amount of times, for example, if you like ask an LLM to, I don't know, create a responsive form with the following fields in it, you'll start seeing all of these old components, like the stack component, that don't exist in the new one. And
Yeah.
it's a common problem with obviously whichever LLM provider you're using and when their latest training cutoff date is. But I kind of wonder whether a lot of those kind of software samples and that now will start coming back around. But yeah, as I say, I was lucky where there was this plethora of content, and I guess also, Microsoft obviously really pushing the sort of low code stuff.
Hmm.
So there was a lot of content out there
Yeah.
and available to sort of to get stuck into. But it took me quite a while, and I actually have to, a lot of it come credit to working with you, where I kind of had this kind of like left portion of my brain that kind of like had done a bit of coding, done this, that, and the other, but wasn't relating it to biz apps or kind of like working within biz apps.
Yeah.
So, I kind of got in as a functional consultant in Dynamics. And it was a very like a sort of more of a CRM heavy partner that I started with,
Hmm.
but just with like really good pros who kind of just understood this is what a user story is. This is what a backlog is. This isn't like, and the first thing that they sent me on a training course to do my Scrum Master certification. And it was just kind of having those kind of like, this is how you function on a project with a customer, that sort of stuff, which really, really helped.
Hmm.
Because I think a lot of people, you sort of see, they come into it so tech focused. And I don't mean kind of technical. I mean sort of, well, the product does this. And
Yes.
it's kind of like, great, I could have read the documentation myself. Thank you for that. But kind of the skills, I think the consultancy skills are really, I think you just have to, you learn by seeing
Hmm.
people who are better than you doing it, right?
Yeah.
And you have to have that, really to jump in. And whilst, agree, anyone should be able to pick up and work with the components, but making sense of requirements and all of those other sort of skill sets, yeah, you learn by doing, and sadly by making mistakes, right? That's
Learn by breaking
that's
things. That's how I've always learned. I still remember,
the only way.
this is going back years. I mean, I must have been maybe 9 or 10. I
Yeah.
remember being at some god awful family event. I think it was a wedding reception or something. And we'd had McDonald's earlier, and so I got the McDonald's toy, and it was this like spinning thing. It was this like
Yeah.
I think this was back in the day when they first did the Sonic toys, because now obviously the Sonic films came out more recently and they have other Sonic toys. But back then there was this thing, and it was like this the bad guy with a big mustache, and he had this big bulbous butt basically, and you spun this, you pulled this cord, and it would spin around and it would stay on the spot. And I was just
Yeah.
looking at this going, how the hell does this work? I don't understand. I don't know what's going on here. So I have to understand this. So I tried my very best to rip this thing apart to look inside. And so after I did that, I then understood what was happening and what it was. I couldn't put it back together. I tried, but I couldn't put it back together.
Couldn't put Humpty Dumpty back together again. That's
Exactly. But
yeah.
through doing that, I still remember a massive part of my way of learning is to take things
Yeah.
apart. So I got a lot better at taking things apart carefully to be able to put them back together. And I still apply that in software. Like when I'm doing
That's version
troubleshooting.
control, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a massive part
Yeah.
of what I do is, can I tweak something to understand what's going on? And if I can understand that, then I can understand where things are going wrong, where they should be going right, and how I can fix them. And I can't do it academically. So that has, I mean, as long back as I can remember, that's what I've done. I mean, even back to when I first played games. My dad has been in computers for a long time, so we had computers around. Although he was always the hardware guy.
Yeah.
But he, for some reason, he collected games, and I don't know if it was. I assume it was actually for me. I have to ask him sometime. But he had a collection of these games on floppy disks, like going back to the good old 286 days.
Yeah, proper. Yeah.
And so we used to play these games, but these are back in the day when they didn't come with manuals. There was no standard key mapping. So it wasn't the good
No,
old
yeah,
fashioned WASD. It's like, no, no, no. None of the standardized crap. No. Every single game had a different way to play, and none of them had a manual.
this is
So the only way we could learn was literally start the game up and mash the keys until something happens. And that's literally what I did with every game. That's how I learned how to play all of those different games. Like just literally trial and error. What does this key do? Nothing at all. Okay, great. What does this key do? Nothing at all. Great. This key. Oh, something happened.
that's it's the inquiring mind thing. I think that is definitely, whatever background people are from in, sort of coming into tech, whatever, is if you've got an inquiring mind and you can inquire without being really stressed that you're inquiring. Because let's be honest, if you've got deadlines, but you're more, you've just, I've got to understand how this works. There's, these kind of different levels to it. But yeah, no, I know what you mean. And I think sometimes it's really good to kind of strip it back a few steps and sort of, yeah, I was saying, my first memories of interaction with a computer are all in like MS-DOS and looking it up. I mean, to be fair, that obviously did come with a pretty hefty manual,
It did.
right?
Yeah. 6.22. That was a good DOS version, that one.
It's one of the goldies. Yeah, exactly. It's yeah, it's interesting because I do find myself now where like a lot of that really good sort of just easy blog posts or sort of things to undocumented things that you could go in and use, I did find really really helpful. But I think I was wondering, I was thinking about what I would bring to the conversation today, and like, the thing that I do struggle with is sometimes I think Microsoft, in terms of how they push the MVP program, is that there is this kind of like, we just want a lot of content and we will reward for a lot of content.
Yeah.
And I think the thing is, now that we do have the documentation, what I do struggle with is sometimes where the awareness content style stuff, where it's like, so a new feature has been released, therefore I'm going to do a blog and a video regurgitating the documentation.
Yeah.
Now, it is totally fine. It's great if there is this has come out and this is a great use case for it, etc., etc. But for example, just saying Dataverse have released an MCP server. Okay, great. So what's the next steps?
Yeah.
And that's the thing where sort of like I just wish there is so much noise out there for someone coming into this now, which it can be frustrating. I think I sometimes I have to say there's a lot of I don't go on LinkedIn that much at the moment because I just find it absolutely appalling sometimes to sort of sift through.
That is interesting. I'd not thought of it like that. I've seen a few people more recently comment on things like that, where they're saying that some of the posts that are coming out are not deep technical dives that in the past would have been there. And I would definitely agree that I've seen a lot more surface material and, exactly as you say, regurgitating release information rather than actually showing, well, why would I care? Why should I care about that new tick box? What does that actually give us? Like, what does that particular thing solve that I didn't know about? That kind of stuff would be useful. But at the same time, yeah, I suppose it's tricky. I think you're right that anyone new coming into this, is it harder or is it easier in some way? There's more to it. The whole platform, there's more to it. Like I said, when I started with the SDK, that was it. I didn't need to know more than that and some JavaScript, and I could do a massive amount of stuff. And then it was just simple forms and workflow. There wasn't more to understand. Now, there are so many options, so many tools in the toolbox to solve the problem. I mean, if you just look at automation, there's still workflows, even though technically they're deprecated. They're still there and they're still very useful. You've got Power Automate flows, logic apps, which are basically just flows anyway, just charged differently. You've got Azure sort of functions and everything that comes with that. There's so much, and that's just one tiny element of implementing a system. You're not even getting into the whole other services. Like Power BI, it didn't exist when charting was a basic thing. I choose this little chart and I say, that's the axis, I'm good.
there is a lot, right? And I think that's, to be fair, even if we took up until November 2022, right? Actually, there was already just so much more to go on. Whereas
Yeah.
I say, I think I arrived, and I do have to tick this one. I did want to speak about this. So I got. Do you remember at HSO when I would go on about Scott Duro? I would basically just have this absolute man crush on you, Scott. But anyway,
He's
uh,
awesome.
he's awesome. I love Scott, but I actually got him to meet him in person at the European Power Platform Conference. I was like, oh,
Nice.
he's really nice as well. He's just like a really, really nice bloke. And I sort of like, I think he probably thought I was an absolute nutcase because I sort of like shook his hand and looked him very squarely in the eyes. I was like, there have been so many times when I didn't know what to do. And I read one of your blog posts and the answer revealed itself. Thank you so much. And you can see he's there going, thanks. Yeah. But what I mean is, we had, like Scott's content and like all of that kind of, it was very obvious where to go. But I can imagine for now and I think also now where if you're in the low code MVP space, really you're in now the Copilot Studio space. And it's and it's like again, like where do you house your automations? Where do you go deterministic, non-deterministic, all that sort of stuff? Which funny enough, also I've been running a few sessions with people just to kind of try and demystify a lot of the sort of things that are labeled and branded within Copilot Studio of kind of like, well, this is what the orchestration engine is doing underneath it, and it is not terribly complicated. This is what it does, and this is how it does it. Because again, I just think the thing of where, we're pretty much in the business of implementing a product, and we're using the benefits and cons of that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think in many instances, like AI is not a biz app. It can make your biz app a lot better, or it's different ways to interact with it. But some of the things like around, like when I sort of see people as I say, oh, with MCP servers, we can now do this. And it's like, as an end user, I don't really care if it's an MCP server or not. It's just made your life as a developer better. And like, so let's talk about that journey, So yeah, I think like just to take on, I know it sounds like I'm community bashing here, but the awareness content around like Copilot Studio and again regurgitating a press release is just kind of like where I kind of like just like I don't need, that's not adding value. Which but we can't all be Scott Duro, can we? That's the thing. We can't all be that good.
No, we can't all be Scott Duro. I mean, yeah. So I would say that him, Jonas, had him on last week. He's an absolute hero of mine as well.
Yeah.
And if anyone watched that, they would have seen that.
Were you starstruck, Reece, just the whole way through?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it was a great conversation. Really, 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 really good. But yes, I quite often was saying, and that's where it started. You were brilliant. You are brilliant. There was a lot of that going on.
Still brilliant. You're just fantastic. Yeah.
But it's funny, actually, you mentioned Neil Parkhurst, because that is a name that he's always in my brain. For good reason. His content on the certifications and learning and how to get the certifications were brilliant back then when I was looking.
It was the only thing that was there.
Yeah, no, he absolutely had that as his niche, and he actually was one of the first people that I spent time with in the community, because when I went to this was D365 Saturday in Dublin, I think it was. Yeah. I ended up having dinner with him at a Chinese at something like 11 o'clock at night, because I was basically going to stay up the whole night because I had an early flight, and I was supposed to go back to my hotel, but I went there cheap, so I was staying in like a motel type thing, and I just didn't want to go back. The place was horrendous. It was such a bad night's sleep I had just before that, and I was like, there's no point me going back. I won't get any sleep anyway, so I may as well stay here. And so Neil Parkhurst and oh God, his name escapes me. An Irish MVP who was there. The two of them know each other well. They were like, just come have food. We're off to go to the Chinese restaurant just down the road. So I was there for like an hour and a half, just talking to them about the MVP program, community, how they got there, what they do. And it was brilliant. Like that was, so I had a few experiences that got me into the community. That was on the first in the first area. but it was Mark and Ian, Mark Christie and Ian, that got me into it in the first place. That's why I was there at that event, was talking to them essentially on Twitter when it was Twitter. Uh, but but that experience with Neil Parkrose, where he didn't know me at all, and he just was like, "Yeah, just come along." It was just
Yeah.
brilliant. It was just such a good thing, and so that's to me what community is about. That, and then the sharing of content. I absolutely would agree that what Scott has shared in the past. I mean, I still use quite a lot of the things I've read from his blog. I mean, the whole fiddler thing. No one had
Oh, I mean,
documented the autoresponder before I saw him do it, and I've used it ever
yeah.
since. I still use it. It's a very, very, very handy way to develop web resources or anything in there.
The only yeah PCS ever. It's the only way to do it without wanting to drive yourself nuts.
Yes.
And I mean,
Yep.
the actually, do you know other person that I really should mention is Julian Sharp, because
Ah, yes.
I signed up. So he was doing these study groups, and
Hmm.
I think it was for the MB200. And basically, to be fair, I would there were some things a bit like, how do you sign up for a trial environment, for example? Like now with developer environments, like it's just so flipping easy. Like, and you sort of, I always like say to people, like, think of all the little bits of infrastructure that have been like whizzed up every time you kind of go, I'll have a little playground developer environment. But anyway, I basically I remember I found him on LinkedIn, and bless him, even though I was kind of at the time in my recruiter role and probably was thinking, oh, great, another recruiter trying to add me. And I said, I'd really like to attend the study session, but in the capacity of learning such and such. And he was like, just, yeah, of course, great. Get stuck in. And to be fair, that side of the community where it is genuinely a really opening place, does it, it's an open space for people to come to,
Yeah.
is really important. And the other side of it being that it humanizes the whole thing, isn't it? Because like obviously, if we all went away, like for example, if I probably a bad example, but if I went and spent like 1,000 hours learning the oboe, right? But you never. But what I mean is, and I just like came out and was just sort of like, and you were like, God, this guy's a genius with the oboe, my word. But you've never seen me practice, or you don't know. I just thought I could basically. It just looks like, yeah, I'm just really good at the oboe, and
Yeah.
it's just this kind of ethereal, like, how on earth is that possible? Whereas actually, the sort of meeting up in the community and like, you're not in your workspace where, let's be honest, sometimes admitting that you don't know something in a work atmosphere is not the easiest thing to do.
Yeah.
And we've sort of seen it and probably been there where, whether someone's asking you a question is kind of like, I will take a note and frantically work out how to do that in the next 25 seconds. Absolutely.
Google,
Whereas
Google,
the
Google.
yeah,
Sorry, Chat
exactly.
GPT, Chat GPT.
ChatGPT, yeah, exactly. But it's that thing, I think, isn't it? In the community where it's just like everyone kind of like, and I had this at the European Power Platform conference where might be sort of thinking, are you having these issues as well? And they would be like, yes, we are. And it's just that kind of just realizing you're not alone with some of the things that you're facing, especially, let's face it, with like remote working, as
Yeah.
wonderful as it is. Being able to just kind of have those events and just as comparators, I think is really really important. But yeah, no, Julian was incredible. So I did my MB200, which was did that turn? They got rid of it, didn't they? When they kind of were like, we want to just sort of put all
Yeah.
of the CRM umbrella config exam, which
Yeah.
actually I think was important. The Dataverse which it was basically Dataverse custom and config,
Yeah.
and it was a really wide exam. And they didn't really replace it with anything. It was the PL 200,
Well,
but
the
that
PL
was
and the
nowhere
and the
near
MB
as deep.
were going hand in hand, because the MB200 was supposed to be customizing. It was customizing dynamics, and the PL200 was customization of the Power Platform. So the two of them. But you're right. The MB200 disappeared because it became the 230 and the 240. So the app specific customization. So that's where
Yeah,
they went with it. So the MB200 became redundant because the PL200 is supposed to cover general customization of the Power Platform. Whereas if you're customizing the sales app or the marketing app or the field service app, then those are the MB 200 for 240, 230, 210. I don't know if they
yeah,
still,
yeah.
I assume they do. I haven't done my certifications in forever. I really keep meaning to do
I
them, but
I really, yeah, I went on an absolute splurge of them when I first sort of got started. But I, again, sort of, I'm much more in the kind of like tinkering. If I've got free time, it's kind of like I want to explore
Hmm.
this, no, but the things I would say is with the PL 200 versus the MB 200. This is niche content, by the way. But I never felt that the PL 200, because it was trying to cover like, okay, so this is how you build a Canvas app or whatever. It didn't really go that deep into custom and config of Dataverse,
Hmm.
and a lot of those, like being able to set field mappings and sort of stuff like that, which like people don't. There's these little niche little nooks and crannies, especially with the old editor, that people won't necessarily know about.
Yeah.
And I think in some ways probably has led to a lot of probably more Power Automate flows out there in the world than there needs to be.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But
So,
that's that whole adage of I need to look it up and remind myself. If all you have is a hammer, then everything looks like a nail. So if you understand Power Automate,
yeah,
then
yeah.
that's
It
what
was
you're going to use
Andrew
for
who. So
everything.
yeah, I think that is, isn't it? If you've got a hammer, everything looks like a nail. And I
Yeah.
remember actually Andrew Welch when I first joined HSA, that was one of the things he said to me. It was just sort of like, start picking your head up a bit and sort of thinking about some of the other possibilities.
Yeah.
Um, but that still comes down to like what you're drawn to and what your skill set is
It
drawn
is.
to, I think, as well, isn't
Yeah,
it?
it absolutely is because my natural place is definitely I prefer the code in many ways, but there's good reason for that. But I think it kind of goes back to what you were saying before the soft skill consulting side. Now we come from a consulting background. We're in the consulting world. Not everyone in the Power Platform is. Some people are client side, customer
Yeah, yeah,
side, so they're implementing it slightly differently. But I would still argue that a lot of what we do is still very much trade offs. And so understanding the platform enough to know what the trade offs are and to communicate
yeah,
those effectively is how you get things done in our world. Because even on a customer side, if you're working in a customer dev team, IT team, whatever, you still have to manage timescales and everything else. It's a slightly different metric. In the consulting world, we measure
yeah.
time because that's money. In the IT world, they measure time because it's how much time do you have available and how many priorities have you got. It's slightly different,
It's
but it's the
so
same
yeah.
idea.
I think there's a different really hasten it, so we use the word vibe now, but yeah, there's a different vibe between if you're on a customer team versus a consultant team, there's whole different connotations to it. But
Hmm.
exactly right, and it's always the thing of like there isn't a perfect solution. It is, as you say, it's kind of being able to weigh up the pros and cons and come to some kind of at least being able to explain the reasons you got to a decision. I think is the important thing.
Yeah,
Whereas I think if you are, it's kind of being upfront and honest with yourself of what you do and don't know, isn't it?
it is.
Because
It is,
because
and
other and
exploring.
actually, yeah, and I think that's the whole thing of like saying to people when you're estimating a user story, etc. And it's perfectly fine to say I need to spend 4 hours on a spike and actually kind of explore this so that I can estimate it because there is this big unknown.
Yeah,
Again, coming back to there's no way that you can know everything, and that's okay. And
yeah,
actually, every customer will understand that as well. In fact, they'll, in my experience, they will very much prefer you to be honest about what you do and don't know, versus the kind of like ferreting away and then sort of it's sort of obvious that you're still online at 4 a.m. before the sprint review, for example. So, but
yeah. I think that that's one thing I use the community for. Or certainly have done in the past, and do now, is to delve into what other people know, so I can kind of what you were saying
yeah,
before about seeing what other people talk about and going up to them and saying, "I've got this problem. Have you got the same problem?" And that's that
yeah,
community spirit that is quite nice, especially when you're working with a product, because the product
yeah,
works in a certain way. And so it's not like you can just crack it open and suddenly understand everything about it. It's not open source software. You're not building it from scratch.
no,
So there's always going to be something in there that you don't necessarily get and is more complicated. So I think of when I went to a conference a while back now, maybe 3 years ago, I remember seeing there were a couple of guys there. Again, their names are escaping me. I'm getting so bad in my old age with names, I tell you.
old
But
age,
these
give over.
these these guys are like they were very good like they've been working with the Power Pages part of the Power Platform for a while. So ADX
Yeah,
portals before that into Dynamics Pages or Power Dynamics portals and then Power Pages. but it was still
There
early
was
days.
Power Apps portals for a while, though, wasn't it?
Yes, yeah. So it was,
And then
yeah, because it was ADX portals, it became Dynamics portals, and then I think at that point they were just getting a bit confused with everything, but they officially then changed it to Power Pages, uh, and it became its own thing. But this would have been probably early Power Pages day branding wise. So there's still
yeah,
a few new things to it, but they hadn't released the new feature of having direct web API access. So as a developer
yeah,
of a website, you couldn't submit data back to the server in real time. Now, at that time, that was insane. Like, this is a website where the only way to get data back into your system back then was to click a button, wait for the page to refresh, and then it's been pushed back to the server. Now, this is in the day and age when we're talking single page applications. It's instantly saving things constantly.
yeah.
Oh, not with Dynamics portals or Power Pages early days. No, 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 no. So one of the things that they
No.
were talking about was how to solve that problem and how they've solved that problem for years, which is essentially to have in the background a little thing in a little iframe that submits the data in a little hidden form. And it was just these little workarounds that
Lovely.
I
Yeah,
remember
yeah,
like them talking about, and it validated that I had done the same thing. So I knew
yeah,
that
yeah,
that was
yeah.
the right way to go because they showed the same thing. I'm like, that's what I do. But I'm going to take a little bit of that because that's actually quite a useful way to call it. I hadn't done it that way. That's really useful. And so for me, it's standing on the shoulders of giants. It's looking at what other people have done and what they're sharing so that I can then do the same, whether it's good or bad, doesn't matter. It's the practice of the moment. It's something useful. And that's why I find the community is really good for when it works well.
Yeah, exactly. And that can sometimes be the quieter voices
Mm.
and the sort of the more subtle pieces that come to it. Um, but yeah, it's so weird. And it's I don't know how I feel about certain bits of vibe coding and what's coming to the Power Platform. And I know I'm genuinely really interested to get your opinion on things such as, so I got my hands on generative pages and code apps
Mm.
in an environment. And in some ways, because like you and I both love a custom web resource,
Yep.
in essence, being able to plonk a absolutely fantastic React app into
Yep.
into a model driven app, and it's kind of just this. Is this still Power Platform? Absolutely. So I'm quite excited about just being able to build a Veep project and just being able to kind of have that hosted and sort of see what that looks like. The thing that I'm less sure of at the moment, where you've got something like generative pages, which, as far as I can see, is you're going to prompt something to basically create one ginormous file of pretty much unreadable React code
Mm-hmm.
that you shouldn't really touch yourself, from what I've heard in terms of doing that. So you're going to keep prompting and iterating over it and over it and over it. How it's just interesting. Whereas, like, we've now obviously got this sort of vibe coding paradigm that potentially is just going to completely make low code completely redundant. But you also need to kind of understand. Well, first of all, you need to have VS Code installed. You have to understand how a project works. You need to be able to run a project, and there's a lot of these kind of things these ancillary bits that you still need to know. Um,
I,
anyway, a lot of anyway, I'm interested. I'm just, like, I don't want
I've
to
got
give
a
you
lot of
too much of
concerns.
yeah,
Like the vibe coding thing concerns me a great deal in many different ways because, and again,
yeah,
even going back to what you mentioned earlier about doing Scrum learning and learning the skills to be able to distill a requirement down to actually build something. You
yeah.
are actually one of the best I've ever worked with at doing that sort of proper.
Oh God, Reese.
Well, no, so
That's
that
very,
that
very, very kind. But
I mean, I don't
yeah.
know if it's a low bar or not. I would say when it comes to Agile and Scrum, I've not worked with anyone better at managing that process than you. Like, you were brilliant at doing that. And I think that is something that if you're going to do vibe coding, might disappear. That ability to do
Yeah,
that,
yeah, yeah.
people don't seem to want to learn that. Or, I mean, I've seen people throw stuff into ChatGPT and that to come up with requirements and then leaving it at that. And that stuff annoys me
Yeah.
because, even if I look at it from a code perspective, like everyone, I use the same thing. I use it to generate my code. The difference for me is I need to understand what's in there. So if I'm getting it to do something, I want to know what it's doing so I know if it's doing it right or not. But that's because I've got that experience. But even with myself, I have used it to build stuff like a web page. I was working on not that long ago a web sort of page type thing. I asked it to come up with something. It came up
Yeah.
with like reams and reams of lines of code. And I just looked at it and I was like, it's doing what I want it to do, but I don't have time to understand what everything there is doing. And I
Yeah.
really don't like that because I'm so uncomfortable with that because I don't know what that's introduced. Now, I did spend time going through it because it didn't feel right doing that. But it actually made my job almost the same as if I'd written it myself because I still had to go and go
Because
through
you're still
every single
responsible for it.
thing.
That's the thing, you're still responsible for it. And that's the other part of it is like there's an ex Netflix coder that I follow. His YouTube channel is like absolutely extraordinary. He's called the Primesian. And he has this idea basically like the first 10,000 lines of code in a code base is pretty much the same however you do it, whether you're, writing from scratch yourself or whether you're getting an LLM to do it. But there comes a point after that where basically any other, and I would say that comes into also, you have a fresh Power Platform environment and you're building out a solution, right? And
Yeah.
the first sort of like 10 features that you chuck into it doesn't really matter. Like you could do it obviously many different ways and it's best
Yeah.
practice, but it's when you start having to live with the consequences of your decisions in the first sort of like 80%,
Yeah.
and then it's like everything else just takes so much longer because you've got all of that stuff to kind of try and reason over.
Yeah.
And it, that's I think the problem, isn't it? You kind of get into any project that kind of grows and grows and grows, and trying to get where if your only recourse is an LLM to debug your code or add a feature to it or understand anything, you as I said, you just and I'm sure there is this kind of point of like, well, does it matter, Sam? Because you're just going to use an LLM to do it, and that goes back to the generative pages thing. Because do you need to touch it? I would still say that like there's that difference between the hobby project that sort of say, hey, I just deployed my app, just go to localhost. You got that kind of hobby developer versus like no, it's like I'm responsible for this working. And if it doesn't work, I'm going to be the person fixing it. And I think that, as you said, then you need to be
Yeah.
responsible for that.
I think it's a lot of people are talking about the future of AI rather than the current reality of AI. Like what it can do is
Yeah,
phenomenal. It can build some all sorts of cool stuff.
yeah,
But I don't feel that it's capable yet to do exactly what you want. Now, I don't know if that's me, as in, am I not giving it the right prompt? As am I not teaching it properly from my expectations? Because I definitely am not. I have this vision that I give it 2 sentences and it's going to build my entire app and it's going to be perfect. Obviously, it can't do that.
yeah,
So there's a skill there at the moment, even just to handhold the AI properly. But the the concern, my biggest concern about the use of AI and how quickly people are adopting the use of AI is the amount of power that it has to just come up with stuff. Whether it's good or wrong or right, it can generate so much stuff that looks amazing and sometimes works and sometimes doesn't. But I can't imagine that all of those code bases that people are generating through this stuff are not inherently riddled with bugs and security flaws and performance issues. And I mean, I don't know if
yeah.
that's just me being an old curmudgeon software developer, but I just feel like that's a ticking time bomb. And yes, I know that the future is they're going to have even more AIs that are going to do even more stuff, but
Yeah. But I think it's still at the moment it's a product. I would still say vibe coding is a productivity tool for developers. It is very powerful.
it
So if
is.
you give
Yeah.
it to someone who has an understanding of yeah, it's just like basics of computer science, then yes, someone is going to be able to do things with it that they wouldn't in the time of
Mhm.
being able to achieve. And I think going back to the sort of that the Scrum Master thing of like prioritization and being able to elicit what really matters and kind of get to something that's going to be a working product. I just wonder where it is just going to be. The expectations are you just do a hell of a lot more within that time, and basically a story point you're basically halving, your estimates for that. But
Probably is.
it's still I think it still sort of feels a bit like a car in automatic or
Mm.
I don't know elements of just it's more of an aid I think at the moment. even though, like, I mean, I talk about you, I've sort of been using. I ran out of Copilot Pro, Copilot VS Code, Copilot Chat premium tokens. And oh my word, if you don't have Claude 4 Sonnet working, it's painful. It's really, really painful. But I guess, when you're talking about like, is it me? Is it the sort of like, is the way that you prompt? I mean, like, let's face it, like it's going to need context of how
Mhm.
you want your code base to look and how what kind of rules and it's the same of like how you want it to extract bits of data or how you whatever kind of
Yeah.
you throw at it. But yeah, I think the vibe coding thing is I think I see a lot of low code developers almost like absolutely kind of going, well, where is my place in the world
Yeah.
now? Because in essence, someone who kind of goes onto Lovable or Replit will have something that's faster, more performant than something where you've kind of learnt a set of tools.
Hmm.
And it's kind of like, great, are people going to migrate over to configuring Copilot Studio, or like it just feels at the moment it's just obviously it's changing also so quickly.
Yeah.
And I still think there's a lot to be said for kind of learning the principles that underline it, because I think it's unlikely that Microsoft are going to have this all right at the first point. I think obviously
Yeah.
we're still in a massive experimentation phase. So, taking some time to kind of understand, just, I'm not saying everyone needs to understand how a transformer works, but understanding how an LLM application works and the sort of flow and sort of debunk some of the magic, I think that would be helpful for people to do.
Yeah.
Um, because I would say definitely our clients and the people we're working with are. So
Hmm.
if you're not doing that as well, and maybe just sort of peeking your head above the Microsoft ecosystem a bit as well, I think that's yeah, very important.
I mean, I think that's it. That's exactly it. It is about the tools there. It's not going away anytime soon. We might see some of the companies go away at some point, but the
Yeah,
actual tool itself, I don't think is going away. It's kind of like
no,
I kind of I've listened to a bunch of podcasts and people talking about AI recently, and you get the sort of the people that are just this is going to change the entire world, and there's the other people that are saying this is going to kill everyone. Either way, it's changing the entire world. I think it's an infrastructure technology in some ways. I don't know if
yeah,
anyone's really truly worked out how to make the promised money out of it, because I don't know what's going to happen there. So the amount of money that people are pouring into these companies, that's going to go away at some point somehow, I think, because I don't think the promise is going to meet the actual reality yet. I don't know. That's the one that's tricky for
it,
me. But
it's
at the very,
yeah,
very basic level of if you are working in tech or anything at this moment in time, if you are not using the tool, if you're not understanding it, then you could put it into the terms of 1998 or whenever it was that Google came out. I think it was 98. If you weren't able to
yeah,
use Google, you were still on Dogpile or Yahoo search or whatever it was back then, then
yeah.
you are less efficient online. Now it's a different thing in some ways, but Google was that it changed how you use the internet to the point that you will say, oh, just Google it now. It's become that verb. ChatGPT and AI and LLMs and AI is that new thing. It's a way of getting knowledge. So I don't think the actual AI stuff that we're looking at right now is going to go away. I just don't know if it's going to deliver on everything they're promising it to be yet. Um,
I think it
but
can
you
do.
have to be on top of
Yeah,
it. You have to understand it. You
yeah,
have to know what's out there. What can I use it for? What does it help me do? And how can I make that better? And that's the same as anything else that's happened in the past. Like when low code became more of a brand thing in the Power Platform, and Power Automate came along. I was like, oh, I guess I need to learn a bit of Power Automate. I mean, I would have liked to write a plugin for that, but I'll go and learn a bit of pretty regularly. Even though I love development, I find Power Automate very useful.
yeah. I mean, it's that's it, isn't it? I think it's just that there's I think it's harder if you're an app. I think if you're kind of like an automation-y kind of person, AI is really easy to make a lot of sense of, I think. Whereas like if you're an application-y developer kind of person, it's sort of, I guess because there are so many kind of like things like lovable replit and ways that you can build out a project now that sort of makes that. I feel that's where sort of the gaps are, but also kind of like how you it's just kind of some of the things I've been working on around how you kind of bring agents into your user interface in a way that's not just a chatbot.
Yeah.
And it's a really interesting, and obviously I think it's so early days. It's going to keep changing, and like it, yeah, how you kind of make a compelling experience that, like, let's face it, you go into something like ChatGPT, and I think obviously that the LLMs underneath it are fantastic, but the thing that bowls me over is how beautiful the product is. And that is actually the thing where, like, obviously, one of the things we're competing against a lot of the time is people copy and pasting their entire, sales ledger into into ChatGPT. But it is such a lovely product to use, and it's interesting. I know we haven't got a lot of time left, but you go into like what they think, and kind of Anthropic and some of these agents, what they think of as an agent
Mm-hmm.
is a really proper, interesting piece of technology. And I think there can be a little bit of need to. There's just so many terms to demystify it. And I guess if you're not kind of like up at 4 a.m. reading the latest blog post and stuff, knowing what you need to be on top of is probably the difficult part.
I mean, the thing is,
But
we'll finish up, I think, on this at the moment. But like
no,
driverless cars, the idea of automated cars and the ability of cars to drive for themselves has been growing steadily for many decades now, and the ability to actually have a car drive itself has surpassed any human at this point. Yes, there are accidents. Yes, people do get injured, but there are infinitely better than any human driver on the road by sheer statistics. Yet they've not become the tour de force everywhere. And I think AI, in some way, the agentic world of AI is a similar problem.
yeah,
When will you entrust an AI agent to go and buy your next 5 grand holiday and book everything for you? Because that's what people talk about, and that's the kind of thing
it's
that
the use case, isn't it? Yeah.
I don't know if I can get there, because I would use it to get the research to say, find me a whole
yeah,
bunch of really nice places I can go that involve beaches, swimming pool within this sort of distance of this area, within this, I want this sort of temperature. I'm sure it can come up with all sorts of good research on that, but to actually go off and take my credit card and go and buy stuff, that's going to be a harder sell for me.
I think so. I think it's going to be interesting bringing in more kind of like payment. So my wife works in e-commerce, and we sort of talk about it. It's like kind of when bringing in the kind of the actual paying for stuff within a chatbot, all of that kind of stuff, which is, I'm sure, not far away. But no, I agree. I think that kind of, it's hard to see beyond the human in the loop for most of these kind of processes. And there's a lot of things where I think like a background ambient agent, which you then check in on, and it's basically just you're just seeing the product of a set of automations really that are helpful across your whatever your workflow is. I can totally see that.
Yeah.
But yeah, the sort of onboarding of a digital agent that has its own Entra ID presence, and it's exists as an employee that gets onboarded, all that sort of stuff. It's like I can totally see the path there. I just don't. I think there's a fair amount of stuff in the way of like, why would you do that? Still, it still feels that we're still in that kind of human accelerated by agents and AI, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, it's good. I mean, let's face it, it's good fun. It would have been rubbish if imagine if you'd like retired in like end of 2022. Probably would have thought it's great actually. I'm doing
It's just, I was just going to say, I don't have to worry about AI then. I could just try and enjoy using it maybe.
exactly.
But yeah, now I have to, I've got at least, I mean, if I'm lucky, I've got another 25, 30 years on my career still. I've got to make sense of all of this crap.
Oh god, yeah.
But then that's why we have the community. They can help us
Oh,
understand
what a
everything.
segue, Reese. That is beautiful.
Well, that brings us to the end of a wonderful conversation. I do have my rapid fire questions, which we'll get into in just a moment. But I have to say that's been a lovely little wander down your background, the Power Platform, the history there, and then into the modern AI world. Because Power Platform Use AI. AI is Power Platform. That's
where we're at.
already, we're seeing that. All right. Well, that brings us to the rapid fire. So,
Okay, right.
favorite Power Platform service?
Dataverse.
Excellent choice.
Yeah, it's Dataverse. Yeah.
Yeah. Favorite conference?
I really like. I haven't been to enough to really have a proper opinion on this, but I really like South Coast Summit. That was a really nice level. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of what they do down there.
Yeah.
Last music you can remember listening to?
I think it was some indie stuff that my wife had on in the car. Could have been the vaccines. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
So not opera then.
No, I do sometimes play. I mean, the thing is, like, when I sort of like sing in the shower, it's like Emma sort of says, it sounds like you're doing a performance. I'm not. I'm just kind of just going, going through the motions.
Oh, your System of a Down in opera style.
No, I kind of like more of a Rammstein kind of person. Just go.
Nice. Actually, that's fitted. Podcasts or TV?
Oh, it's both really. I watch too much and listen to far too many. But I guess if I could only have one, I probably would do podcast. Yeah.
Cool. And if you had 2 hours with no other responsibility, what would you do?
Probably obsessively develop something on the latest SDK that I found for an hour. And then if it's on, I'd either watch a good Formula One race, some cricket,
Nice.
or Man United.
Oh,
And
wow,
while
that's
doing those three things, it would be with a good glass of red wine in my hands. Yeah.
that is a busy hour. I love
That's
it.
it. What I've done there is basically said, right, so you've asked me to list one thing I would do, so I'm just going to try and demarcate across those many things.
That is a sign of someone that needs more time to do the things he wants to do.
Oh, don't we all? Yeah.
Although, interestingly, the cricket this week, you would have had a nice hour there.
Oh, heartbreaking. Yeah, we were in I was trying to be present at a family occasion, and we were walking around a lovely Welsh village together. And I was kind of like having to coyly look at my phone with not ideal conditions in a valley for phones coverage, and then sort of look up and then trying to communicate with my dad what had happened in a sort of like way that my mum and my wife were kind of like, can you just stop looking at the cricket scores? But just sort of like, he lost a wicket. He lost a wicket. But yes.
There's one left and he's only got one arm. How's it going?
It was this. It was like, no, I think I'd lost all kind of sense of decorum at that point. I was like, he's come out to bat. And Dad go, Wokes? No way. Oh, terrible. Anyway, no, it's those kind of shared experience sport, isn't it? That's what it's what's all about. Yeah.
I think I'm gonna have to shift my questions around because the next one. So I've got two more.
Okay.
So
okay.
This one I think I should do before the one before. But anyway, books or audiobooks?
Oh, books. Yeah. Yeah, definitely
cool.
Books.
And glass half full or glass half empty of wine?
I think I'm glass half full. I think so. I think as you get older, though, you have to fight the temptation to go the other way, though. I think, but yeah, I very much try to be a glass half full.
Yeah, I think it's. I like that in there. And a lot of people do say glass half full, and I think a lot of that is because people think that's the right way to say it. I think that we all go through both. Sometimes it's half full, sometimes it's half empty. I think everyone should strive to the half full because, hope and positivity is a good thing to have. But half empty just means it's got a whole half to be filled up. So,
I think so. Let's be honest, we all go through things, and that's, we all go through things in our lives and times of life which can be really difficult, and you've got to sort of just rock up and kind of get things done. And I think at that point, it can be very difficult to be a glass half full kind of person.
Yeah.
No, I think I can sort of be that to a fault in terms of we can get that done in the time. Like that'll be absolutely fine. Yeah.
Reality be damned.
Again,
Yes.
living with the consequences of your actions. 4 a.m. before the sprint review. Uh,
Yes. Yes. Speaking of which, I have a deployment to do this evening.
yeah, but you're just going to be running the pipeline, really, surely.
That's exactly what I'll be doing. Yep, pipeline.
I
Oh,
mean,
that's a whole different. We should have a. I should bring you on again at some point. We could just moan about pipelines and automation and ALM. There's just I had some wonderful joys on that today, but that's a whole different ballgame.
it really is, isn't it? It still feels again like wherever you go, do you know what I mean? You sort of see people have just completely different ideas of what it should be. And you come across these, go, what the hell and why? Why would you do that? But it's again, I think the awareness sort of stuff, isn't it? That's anyway. I could talk to you forever, mate, but I'm sure your audience probably, probably if they're still going now, then
Like I said in the LinkedIn, wonderful person to talk to. You're very charming and very enjoyable to spend a good hour and a bit with. So
oh,
I'm sure no one
likewise.
minds.
Oh, no, likewise,
So yes,
mate.
thank you very
Really
much
enjoyed it.
for joining me today. It's been thoroughly enjoyable, and maybe I'll see you at South Coast Summit because I'll be down there this year. So if you're going, then
That sounds good, mate. I'll see you there. All right.
excellent. Well, good night, everyone, and thanks for joining us.